Hello everyone, welcome back to my product chat series. My name is Rafeda and today our guest is Arjun, who is a product manager at YouTube. He has been in the field since 2019 and started as a associate product manager at Google and made his way up as a product manager at YouTube. I'm excited for the conversation today. Hi Arjun, thank you for being here. How are you?
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Rafita. It's really exciting to be here and join your podcast.
No, for sure. How about we start with your journey? I see that you were in computer science, you were doing an internship in software engineering. So how did you got inspired to do like product management?
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually got inspired to do product management at one of my internships when I was interning as a software engineer at Microsoft. And at that point, I got handed over a PRD, which is a product requirements document, by my PM, who said we should build this API. And it didn't make sense to me. So I was like, PM, like, why should we do this? And how many customers are going to be impacted? How much revenue does this make? And I went to my manager and I was like, I don't agree with the strategy here. And my manager was like, that's not your job. I was like, well, then whose job is it? He's like, that's the PM's job. I'm like, okay, I want to talk to the PM then. And so I set up a meeting with this PM, and she was kind enough to sit down over coffee and walk me through her like thought process, which made complete sense when I actually like heard her out. And I was like, oh, this is a full-time job. And she's done a lot more thinking than I have. And she's really thinking like 5 years out. And I was just thinking like 2 months out. And that's when she encouraged me to like, if I was interested in this, to explore product as like a career. And I was like, yeah, I had an itch. So I was like, let me try to get a PM internship at Microsoft and see what it's like. And I think the first day of my internship, when I started to learn what I was doing, I kind of knew that was the right role. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is way more fun to me than like software engineering.
Why? Like what's the like I know that both are completely different roles,
Yeah.
but there's something I would say within product management that you enjoy the most.
I think the one I enjoy the most is just working with so many different stakeholders and thinking very long term, right? Like, I think there is similar to software engineering, when you crack a code, right? You sit for hours, you problem solve, and then you finally come up with something. You're like, yep, I got it. This is how you like build stuff. I think in product management, there's a similar thing where it's like you don't exactly know what your customers want, but you have a hypothesis of what your customers want. And you work with so many different stakeholders to put together that holistic product that would be a great MVP or could be a great enough like product that a customer would choose to use you and give you 5-star reviews. Um, I think that is itself a very interesting problem for me to solve. Um, I think there's a lot of like human psychology involved. There's understanding market dynamics, understanding your competitors, and obviously understanding the technology behind the product. So I think there's a lot of things to think about from a holistic lens that you just don't do in software engineering. And so I enjoyed that puzzle a lot more than the software engineering one.
Makes sense. And what do you think? Like, did your technical experience as a software engineer help you in any way in terms of product management?
Yeah, look, absolutely. I think anyone coming from any backgrounds into product management, it will help them in some dimension, right? So if you kind of lay out all the skills a product manager needs, like there will be some that are more spiky than others
Yeah.
because of the background. And for me, that was like the technology front, right? Like talking to engineers, working with engineers, brainstorming different ways to like quickly build something, was came very easily to me because I just did that in college for 4 years. But everything else, for example, design and working with design was very new. And every time they came to me and asked me, what do you think of the design? I was like, I don't know. Like, I have not studied design. Why are you asking me for my opinion? Right. And that's when I realized like I need to brush up my design skills. I took some courses in design and learned how to like speak the design language, right? So you can give more tangible, concrete feedback.
Yeah.
Similarly with data science too, right? I'd never worked with data science before, so I had to build my skills there. My business skills were horrible. So like, how do I analyze a market and how do I understand the competitors and the
Right.
strategies and the moats? And I felt like I was lacking all of these different skills, which someone coming from a non-technical background might have, right? And they might have to like learn the technical skills. So I think overall, depending on the team, depending on the strengths and weaknesses of the team, you will have to learn some skill or the other so you can be more competent while working with stakeholders.
I love that. It's very, very important that, you need to always educate yourself, even though when you think you know everything, there's always something that you need to learn in a job. That leads to my other question. If someone is not coming from a technical background like you, what do you think they should know at least before going into product management?
Yeah, look, this is a question I get a lot. I
Mhm.
think the way I like to describe this is you uh, imagine that you're a product manager, and you want to do that role. And the equivalent of this is like a restaurant manager, right?
Mhm.
So imagine you're running a restaurant,
Yeah.
and you're a restaurant manager. Knowing what the chefs are doing in the kitchen, right? And whether the food is good or bad, and for you to evaluate that as a restaurant manager is very critical because that's what your customers will at the end of the day eat, right? And so you can learn all the skills needed just to manage a restaurant without knowing how to cook.
Yeah.
But you need some level of like ability to know if this is overburned or underburned in a sense, or undercooked in a sense, right? Like, so I think that's the equivalent here, where like engineering plays a very, very critical piece, right?
Mhm.
And understanding like what it takes to build a good product is very crucial. You don't need to be a master at it, but you do need to understand the fundamentals. And so my advice usually is take a coding class for fun, right? Just learn how like stuff is built, and just try to get like an intuitive understanding. Because once you get that intuitive understanding, then it becomes easier to follow along a lot of the other stuff engineers are talking about. So start with basics, like take 6 months, 8 months, like build something for fun, like build an app for your friends, build a website for your friends. It's also fun because you're creating something new, and then
Exactly.
it will help you when during hiring as well. So when you're hiring like an engineering manager or you are evaluating their skills from a PM standpoint, I think it will help you understand if they're good or bad, like developer based on the way they communicate and the technologies they keep up with. And I think it also reduces the fear that like non-technical people have when new waves of technology come across, right? Like currently we're in an AI boom,
Yeah.
right? It is complicated. Like I've spent a lot of hours trying to understand this space, and I am technical and I still don't understand a lot of it, right? I maybe get like 5% of what's being taught in a lecture. Um, and if you get scared of that because like there's some new technology trend coming and as a non-technical person, you just can't grasp it and you think all these engineers figured it out, you will always be at a disadvantage in this industry, right? So like learn those skills because it's very critical for you.
I agree. There's always something or the other coming in when it comes to technology, so it's very, very important to
Totally.
keep learning. The other question is that when you were going through the interview stage, or let's start with the very basic, when you thought of maybe applying to a position at Google, how did you create any roadmap for yourself? How did you approach that, just applying to that job?
Yeah, I think there are different approaches to this. Everyone I have spoken to do different things in the APM program that I'm part of. For me, my journey started like 2 years before I got into the Google Associate Product Management program. I actually applied for the internship. I did not get the internship, right? I went on site. Unfortunately, I was not strong at my interviewing skills and I lacked a lot of experience. And so I didn't get the internship offer. And I was like, okay, let me go and like work as a product manager and build my interviewing skills a lot more. And so next year, I got like 2 internships in the product management space. I spent a lot of time like learning about different parts of the user funnel, right? So analytical was like, or metrics was like a big focus in one of my internships. In the other internship was user experience was a big one, right? Like, and shipping something end to end. So I got to do a lot of that. And when it came to interviewing specifically, I knew that was a weak point for me. And so I spent about 4 to 5 months before the roles opened up in like September, October. So I spent starting late June to all the way until November, I was like preparing very hard for interviews and doing like mock interviews almost every day. Right. And so by the time November came around and I had my on-site at Google, I was very comfortable with product questions. I think I had done about 120 like mocks by then.
Wow.
And so I was like, I can solve any basic question very, very well. And it's only the more complicated questions that like kind of stuttered me. And so that was my journey. And whatever said and done, you can be very confident in your prep, but on the interviewing day, just discount it by like 30-40% because you will not be that good, right? It's very rare that you are actually at peak performance on interviewing day. You're probably like 30-40% worse than what your peak performance was.
Yeah, makes sense. So when before even the interview, when you submitted the application for anyone who wants to go into product management and who wants to work at Google, did you go through a referral system or did you just apply?
I did have a referral system. I think that's the best way to get ahead of the pool. I obviously don't know how hiring works completely, but I do find that like referrals has worked well for me. I actually think a combination of knowing someone who can refer you and knowing the recruiter, so you can ping the recruiter being, I have a referral. Can you please like um, give me an interview? It helps. That's what I did for my Google interviews. I think there's another strategy I've seen work is like you ping your referral contact at the company and ask them to ping the recruiter saying, please prioritize this application. That helps. But I do think this is a lot of it is luck because there are like thousands of people applying. They can only interview so many people. And so like a good word goes a long way.
Yes, makes sense. So what do you think? Like internships helps in terms of like be it internships, project plans. I have seen people like we just spoke about building your own thing. Those are a few things that people are doing to get into product management. Is there anything else that you recommend?
My general advice on like building the product management skill set has always been to start something, right? So if you're at a university today or you are currently working in the industry and want to like pivot into product management, just start something for your friends. Like build a product that your friends will use. Um, Find a pain point. It could be something as simple as I don't like the t-shirts people are wearing, so I want to start a t-shirt company, right? Fine, like build something and get people to wear it and try to sell it and try to grow that market, right? And if you can, you'll quickly realize like you can't do all of this alone. You'll build a team around it, right? And so doing this will teach you a lot more about product management than sitting in any classroom will, because you're actively learning the product management skill set. I would argue you're learning more of the founder skill set as well, along with product management, but you'll eventually learn that like you need to hit product market fit and you'll have your own way of figuring out how to product market fit. You'll be like, oh, what's the pricing and why aren't people buying this? Like, what am I doing wrong? So you will learn all of this stuff and you're just doing that at scale at like these bigger companies, right?
I like that. Thank you for sharing that. Any specific certifications or I would say maybe any YouTube channels that you followed which help you in your product management journey?
Yeah. Wait, I think I have done Lenny's newsletter or something. I have read it religiously. He also has a course once in a while that he does. I think it happens every fall. And he posts on Twitter, so like keep an eye out. I think Shreyas also has like a course that I have done, which has been useful. Um, I do think a lot of this is like when you are a PM, like then it's more useful. If you're looking to get into PM, um, I think Exponent was like a course that I did, which is like a interviewing prep website that has helped me. Stellar Peers was another one. I actually have a whole article on this called Navigating APM Interviews on Medium that lists like all the resources I use to help me get like an APM role or like a PM role in the industry. So I would recommend like looking at that. But yeah, those are the few ones that come to me.
I would definitely check that out. I know about the first few ones that you mentioned.
Um,
Definitely would check out the last one.
cool.
Um, the other thing is, are there any specific, I would say that once you are going in the field and with time, when you want to learn, I know that product management like field is like just changing very rapidly. How do you adapt? That's a big one. So how do you adapt to like different changes?
Yeah, product management as a field is constantly evolving. There's
Yeah.
like what is expected of a PM constantly keeps changing, right? But I think at the core of it, you are responsible to making sure you're building products that customers love.
Mm.
And and that's generating like revenue for the business, right? And I think if you can do those two things, irrespective of like what your exact role is, and that might change on a day-to-day or quarter-to-quarter basis,
Yeah.
I think you're accomplishing what a product manager is meant to do, right? So I would say assess the strengths and weaknesses of your team,
Yeah.
right? And then be like, okay, this part of like our team does not perform well. I'm going to step in and like help out here or get more resources here or do something to accelerate like this part of the team. And that skill really helps you um, become a better product manager, I think, right? And I don't think like just because industry trends of like what is happening in like PM apply to every team, every company, every like person. I think it's very team dependent. Sometimes your leadership is horrible and you
Mhm.
don't agree with the strategy. Like, what do, right? In that case, you have to probably do a bunch of prototypes and test and quickly validate the hypothesis that leadership has, being like, this actually is not a good idea because of this customer data, right? And you have to prove it. In other cases, your leadership might be fantastic and they're giving like this amazing strategy that you're like, wow, then it's all just execution. And you just have to like make sure how can we hit this as quickly as possible, right? And that's a very different ballgame. So I think joining different companies, joining different teams at different stages of like a product life cycle will give you that experience and that nuance of what it takes to be like a successful PM.
Since you brought up the team, if you're going, so for example, when you went into a team as an associate product manager with people in the same team with multiple years of experience,
Right.
how did you make yourself stand out and let people hear you? That's a big one.
Yeah, I actually got a great piece of advice when I first started because I was learning about I first joined Google Hotels, which is like a travel product.
Yeah.
And I spent a lot of time in my first 2 months like reading about the travel industry and
Mm-hmm.
reading about like our competitors, and reading about all of these things because I thought that's what a PM does. And there was this one like senior PM that I was on a call with, and she just told me, she was like, don't waste your time doing all this. Like, it does not matter. Like, you will never be able to change major strategy because you don't have credibility on this team yet. And I was like, oh, wow, that hurts. I was like, so what do I do? And she was like, just execute. Like, whatever project you're given, just crush it. And I was like, oh, interesting. And so I started following that advice. And every project that my manager gave me, I just like knocked it out of the park in either in ways which is like expected of me, which is like, hey, Arjun was supposed to do this, but he did it faster, or he did it quicker, or he did it like more with fewer resources, or he changed the strategy and like tried something else and that worked, right? And so whatever was given to me, I like crushed it on that, and that gave me more people were like, oh, this person can execute and this person can get stuff done. And engineers liked working with me, and designers liked working with me because I was able to launch stuff on the team. And then my manager's like, why don't you lead this new project end to end? And there I got to do a little more strategy work and influence, like where we end up as a product, right? So that kind of taught me that, like, actually at my current stage as a junior product manager, what really matters is like working with all these senior people and showing that I'm capable of whatever they give me to do.
I think it completely depends on the manager too, because I don't think with every company, every manager should be the same. So I think it completely depends. This leads me to another question. So if you want to interview, I don't know if you have interviewed anyone till now for a product manager role, or if you plan to interview anyone in the future, what skills would you look for in a candidate?
Yeah, look, I've done like dozens of interviews and interviewed a bunch of people. I think the majority of PMs, I feel, when they interview, um, don't have clarity of thought, right? Or don't take the time to think through like the clarification questions. I actually think the first 5 to 10 minutes of an interview tell me a lot about how well the candidate has prepped or how well they're going to structure their answer. Because if they actually break down the question and parse every word of the question and really understand it, being like, oh, so these are all the bounds and constraints of
Mhm.
my question, then they put together a roadmap on how they will answer this question.
Right.
Um, that gives me a good signal of like this person knows what they're doing and has a very structured way of thinking about things, right? I think a little bit of randomness is okay, but just jumping into an answer or trying to answer something because you want to come off as smart or say something because you heard it somewhere else just doesn't work. I think using frameworks is actually completely okay, and it gives you that structure that you need.
Yeah.
Just personalize the frameworks to that question, right? Like if you
Yeah.
blanketly use a framework, it's very obvious. But if you personalize it to being like, hey, actually for this question, I will only cover this part of the framework and not this because I think this is more relevant. I can tell that like you are following the best practices, but also learning to like iterate on top of it and come up with your own insights.
Yeah.
So I think that's like a big scale. I think a bigger one is a lot of people forget the goal in the question,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
If you forget to ask the goal, I think that's even more problematic. But a lot of people ask the goal. And then throughout the conversation, by the time we get to the end of the interview, I'm like, how would you measure success? And they just list success metrics because that's what they remember without ever referring back to what the goal of the question originally was, right? So I think those are like key things that I look for, and a big problems that I think a lot of PMs make when they're like interviewing.
Okay, I like that. I did not think it from that perspective. But yeah, it's very important to answer it through, I think there are different methodologies. I like STAR, but it's very, very important to just not like answer abruptly to anything. It's more like
Yeah.
even if you don't know anything, just like ask them again if we could clarify the question. Um, for anyone who is trying to secure an interview in product management, any advice for them how they can show their transferable skills, like you mentioned earlier in their interview,
Yeah. This is advice for getting the interview or during the interview?
before the interview?
Before the interview, right? I think having a solid resume helps, but I have never over-indexed on a resume, right? Because I think it's definitely a filter. It like helps like recruiters make a decision. But I've always relied on a network.
Mm.
So I have my internships that I have received at Microsoft and then at Smartsheet have been more focused on just building a network, and I got them through friend of a friend of a friend or someone who knew recruiting, or like I met like a PM for coffee and they were kind enough to say I will refer you and put in a good word. So I've always felt like unless all else fails, the resume hopefully has enough experience that a recruiter will be like, that's amazing. But in most cases, a network has helped me get interviews, get opportunities. I don't think there has been a single internship that I have received that I
Mm.
have applied to online. That has
Wow.
never happened. I wish it did because I have applied to like hundreds or 200, 300 like applications online and like I get maybe an interview or two sometimes, but most of the time it's like through my network. So I would actually say if you plan on switching jobs or plan on recruiting 6 or 8 months later, start now, right? And just build that network because you don't want to meet someone and straight away be like, can you please refer me?
Yeah.
Right? You want to build that network and you want them to vouch for you that tomorrow when you do ask for a referral, they are more than happy to give it to you. Yeah.
And that's a very good one. I see so many posts on LinkedIn of recruiters. They're like, we get so many messages in a day, and people are just like, can you refer me without even knowing that person?
Yeah.
It's just like a jump on message of like, okay, LinkedIn connection. Hi, this is me. And would you be able to refer me to this position? Or can you check my application? This is not the right way.
Totally,
Yeah.
totally. And don't ask for a lot of like, just go out with a very curious mind when you're talking to like industry professionals. I feel like a lot of students reach out and be like, hey, can you please review my resume? I don't have the time to like review your resume, give you feedback. Also, I'm the wrong person to ask. You need to ask recruiters because they are the ones actually screening the resume, right? So be conscious of what you're asking. And I love chatting with students or other folks who are genuinely just interested in the product role. And like, they're like, wait, what do you do? Why do you do this? How do you like prioritize? What skills are needed? Do you think like this skill set is better than this skill set? Or like, how can I improve? I'm like, okay, this person is actually interested and wants to, is eager to learn versus just having a conversation to get a referral.
That's a really good one. This brings me to the last question. How
Uh-huh.
can aspiring product managers get into the field? Any advice for them, be it anyone who wants to transition into product management or any new grad?
Um, if they're looking to transition, I think it helps to going back to like um 2 points, right? Like one is like build that network, and second is start something. So if you have more time and you're willing to wait like a year, year and a half, right? Start something, build that, grow that, test if you like product, then build a network and then try to pivot into it. The alternative you can do if you're working somewhere and want to pivot into product and don't have the time is try to work with an existing PM at your company, right? It's much easier to do intercompany like
Yeah.
transitions than trying to go from like an engineering or a design role into product at an external company, because that's a big risk for some other company to take versus the company that knows you might like be like, okay, you perform really well. You seem to be really inclined towards product. Why don't we give you a shot? All right.
Yeah.
So they might carve out, say, 20% project. So one day of your week is product role, and you prove yourself there and try to get a product role internally. And then you can use that experience to look something externally.
I agree. Yeah. Especially with this saturated market, I think it's the best way if you can move within your company. I think that answers all my questions, but thank you so much for your time. This was really helpful.
Of course, it was great chatting with you too. Thank you for having me.
For sure.